Just sign it, Mom. It's only $850 though. My son Kyle smiled as he slid a crisp white folder across the dining table like he was offering me a menu instead of a mountain of debt. Ashley, his wife, leaned forward and tapped the cover with her perfectly manicured nail. You've worked your whole life. It's time you helped us get started. I looked down at the loan application. My name was already filled in on the signature line. Co-signer, $850,000. Fixed rate mortgage, 30 years. Kyle leaned back, arms crossed, like this was just a formality. I looked at the chocolate cake still on the counter, the one I'd baked for my grandson's 4th birthday. My hands still smelled like vanilla extract and lemon zest. I'd come with balloons, toys, homemade treats, and apparently a wallet with a pulse. It was supposed to be a celebration. I remember humming to myself that morning, the way I always did when I baked. I'd made the same cake for Kyle when he was 4, back when he used to climb onto the counter and steal spoonfuls of frosting when he thought I wasn't looking. I thought this would be a moment of legacy, of joy. I didn't know I was walking into a trap. Ashley poured me a glass of lemonade. We already found the house. 4 bedrooms, big yard for the boys. You'll love it. I'm sure it's beautiful, I said, keeping my voice calm, but I'm not comfortable co-signing a loan that big. Kyle blinked. Once? Like he hadn't heard me correctly. You've got money sitting in the bank. You barely spend it. Why wouldn't you want to help your family? I worked for that money. I replied, my voice quieter now. Every dollar in my account came from 42 years of 12-hour shifts and missed holidays. That's my retirement, Kyle. Ashley scoffed. We're not asking you to give it away. Just back us up. What's the point of having money if you're not going to use it for your kids? And there it was. The quiet, sharp twist of guilt. The kind only family knows how to deliver. They kept going. Told me I was being selfish. That I was holding them back. That if I really loved my grandkids, I'd sign. That I had more than enough. And what good was it sitting in a bank account? I sat there listening to my own child talk to me like I was an obstacle, a broken ATM, a burden. My hands were shaking by the time I stood up. I looked at Kyle, my only son, the boy I'd raised alone, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for. And all I could think was, he doesn't see me as his mother anymore. Just a missed opportunity. When I refused again clearer this time, Kyle didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just said, fine. If you won't help willingly, we'll do it the legal way. Ashley nodded smug. We'll see you in court. And that was it. I drove home in silence. Not even the radio to keep me company. Just the ticking of my turn signal and the sound of my own heart heavy in my chest. I didn't cry. I'd done that before. Cried when Kyle dropped out of college. Cried when he married Ashley without telling me. Cried when I missed his first Father's Day because he forgot to invite me. But this wasn't sad. This was something else. Colder, sharper, like glass cracking under pressure. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my banking app. Looked at the number I'd built with my own 2 hands. Every penny earned the hard way. Every dollar a decision. A trade-off. A sleepless night. Or an extra shift. And now my own son was trying to take it because he felt entitled to it. I made a cup of tea, took a deep breath. Then I called a lawyer. I wasn't going to give up my life's work without a fight. My lawyer's name was Evelyn Grant. She was sharp, calm, and didn't flinch when I told her my son was suing me. She sat across from me in a small conference room, flipping through the paperwork Kyle's attorney had sent over. This is unusual, she said, eyebrows raised. They're claiming you made a verbal promise to help them secure a mortgage. I nodded. They say I promised to co-sign, that it was understood. Evelyn looked at me not unkindly. Did you? No. I stared at the glass of water in front of me. I told them I'd think about it, and that was 6 months ago. She leaned back. That's not a contract, but we'll need to show a clear pattern of communication and financial independence. Can you get me all your bank records, texts, emails, anything that shows you've supported them in the past? I didn't even hesitate. I have everything. That night, I pulled out the big accordion file from my closet, the one I kept for tax records and receipts. I'd always been organized, some called it old-fashioned. But in that moment, it felt like my past self was protecting me. Pay stubs from the hospital, savings account statements from the 90s, college tuition payments I made on Kyle's behalf, loan forgiveness letters when he dropped out. I found a birthday card he'd given me once back when he was 17. Thanks for always believing in me, Mom. I don't say it enough. I closed the card slowly and set it aside. That boy was gone. Let me tell you something about raising a child by yourself. It makes you believe you're the glue, the foundation, the only thing keeping everything from falling apart. And for a long time, I was. When Kyle was 8, he broke his arm falling off a neighbor's tree. I had to leave my shift early, lost 4 hours of pay, and still managed to make him laugh through the cast. When he turned 13 and started mouthing off, I stayed up all night reading parenting books. Tried every approach, gentle, tough, honest. I wanted to do it right. And when he got accepted into community college, I bought him a laptop with money I'd saved over a year in secret. He thanked me with a shrug. By then, the gratitude had started fading. But even when he disappointed me, I kept giving. Gas money, grocery cards, helping with the down payment on their first car, watching the kids while Ashley needed a break. I never said no. And that was my mistake. Because somewhere along the way, helping became expected, not appreciated, just assumed. I remembered one Sunday a few years back. Kyle and Ashley had invited me over for dinner. I showed up with a roast green beans homemade peach cobbler. My grandson hugged me. I smiled, thinking maybe things were turning around. But halfway through dinner, Ashley turned to her friend and said, "Oh, don't mind the food. My mother-in-law's old school always insists on cooking. She doesn't know how to relax." They all laughed. Kyle didn't defend me. I laughed too, but something in me cracked that night. It was small, but I felt it. The more I gave, the less I mattered. It was like I'd been slowly dissolving in their eyes. Not a woman, not a person, just access, security, a walking plan B. Now they'd taken it even further. They weren't just taking me for granted, they were trying to take what I'd built. And they thought the courts would force me to hand it over. That's when it hit me. They didn't understand where that money came from. Not really. They hadn't seen the blisters on my feet from 14-hour shifts. They hadn't watched me fall asleep sitting up in the break room during double overtime. They hadn't stood in line at the bank after night shifts, fingers numb, depositing $38 at a time into a savings account labeled future. To them, it was just there, magically, like lights turning on with a switch, like a fridge always full. They had no idea what it meant to build something with your bare hands and keep it with your will. But they were about to find out. Evelyn called 2 days later. They're pushing for a hearing next month. It'll be public. Are you sure you're ready for that? I thought of Kyle's face when I refused to sign, the smug tilt of Ashley's voice, the silence of my phone on every holiday unless someone needed money. Yes, I said quietly. I'm ready to speak. For once, I won't be whispering my no. The envelope came certified. Thick paper, legal print, my name in capital letters across the top. Plaintiff Kyle Davis and Ashley Davis, defendant Gloria Davis. Seeing my own name, my own son's name, and the word verses between us, it felt like swallowing broken glass. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time just staring at it. Then I opened it. They were suing me for failure to fulfill a verbal contract. The claim stated I'd agreed to co-sign a home loan and reneged in bad faith, causing them emotional distress and financial instability. They wanted $850,000 in damages. Ashley had even attached a spreadsheet estimating lost equity potential over 30 years. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were trying to rob me. I called Evelyn. We need to fight this. She sighed. We will. But I'm going to be honest, family court can get messy when emotions are involved. Judges don't like these cases. They see a lot of them. children suing parents, siblings over estates. It gets ugly. I'm not scared of ugly, I told her. I wasn't. I was furious. What's wild is how quiet it all became. Kyle didn't call, didn't text. Weeks passed and my phone stayed silent except for Evelyn and my cousin June, who called every Tuesday with gentle reminders to breathe. They're trying to scare you, June said. Don't let them twist you up. I'm not scared, I said, and it was true. I wasn't scared. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd raised someone who thought money trumped love, that I'd passed down everything, my work ethic, my savings, my roof, without passing down a single ounce of respect. That was the real heartbreak. One day, I saw Ashley at the grocery store. She didn't see me. She was talking loudly on her phone, near the produce section, pushing one of those expensive collapsible strollers. Heard from the lawyer. Court's next Friday. She'll probably cry and act like she's old and frail, but the judge will see through it. She's stubborn, not stupid. I turned down the soup aisle and left my cart behind. I didn't cry. I walked out into the parking lot, sat in my car, and stared at the steering wheel. There's something about realizing someone expects you to lose that lights a fire under you. That night, I pulled out every bank record I'd ever saved. The old black folder came down from the top shelf in the closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were paper stubs from jobs that don't even exist anymore. Nursing homes that had closed, hospitals that had changed names. Paychecks from 1986, 1993, 2002. Tax filings, retirement account statements. I documented everything not for them, but for me. Because I believed in proof, in preparation. I spent the entire night sorting, scanning, labeling. By morning, I had a 3-inch binder and a digital drive ready for Evelyn. She called me that afternoon. You weren't kidding about being organized. I told you, I said, I may be old school, but I'm never unprepared. She laughed. Honestly, this will help a lot. There's no evidence of any formal agreement. Just a lot of vague text and a birthday video where Ashley says you're generous beyond words. We'll file for dismissal based on lack of contractual evidence and counterclaim for emotional distress and defamation. I raised an eyebrow. You think they'll settle? I don't think they realize who they're messing with. I smiled for the first time in days. Friday arrived like a storm cloud. Court was downtown. Pale stone walls, glass elevators, security checkpoints. It didn't feel like family, it felt like battle. Evelyn was waiting for me inside, heels, sharp posture sharper. Kyle and Ashley showed up late. Ashley wore white like she was the grieving party. Kyle wouldn't look at me. For a moment, I thought of grabbing his hand, asking why. But that moment passed. Just like the boy I raised had passed into a man I no longer recognized. The hearing began with procedural introductions. Then it was their turn. Ashley spoke first. Her voice was smooth, coached, rehearsed. She talked about expectations, about emotional commitments, about how I'd always said I'd help. The lawyer played a clip from a birthday dinner where I toasted to supporting family always. Then it was my turn. Evelyn stood and laid out every document, every timeline, every check and deposit. My savings account, my retirement plan, the absence of any written promise, the clear financial boundary I'd always maintained. The judge listened quietly. Then he leaned forward and asked one question. Who created the money in this account? I answered without hesitation. I did. His brow lifted. How? 42 years of nursing, overtime, night shifts, Christmas Eves, missed birthdays, and discipline. I made it. The courtroom went still. Kyle looked away. Ashley adjusted her necklace. The judge nodded slowly. Well, then he said this case isn't about promises. It's about entitlement. The gavel hit like thunder. Case dismissed. They didn't speak to me after the ruling. Not a word. Not even a glare as they shuffled out of the courtroom with their attorney, her binder clutched tightly to her chest like it might still shield them from shame. Ashley kept her chin high, but her lips were trembling. I caught that even as she passed me like I was invisible. Kyle wouldn't meet my eyes, not once. And that hurt more than all the rest combined. Evelyn walked me out to the steps. The afternoon sun made the white concrete glow under our feet. "You did well in there," she said. "I just told the truth," I replied. "Truth does all the heavy lifting when you let it." She smiled. "That it does." I paused at the top step and looked out at the busy street, honking cars, people hurrying to lunch, a couple arguing near a bus stop. All of it moving forward, unaffected. I realized then that even when your world cracks open, the rest of the world doesn't stop to notice. When I got home, I took off my shoes and walked barefoot across the living room rug. For once, I wasn't thinking about what meal to prep for Kyle's boys, or whether Ashley needed help with daycare pickups, or how much the electric bill had gone up again. I was thinking about me. That was new. I poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat at the kitchen table, and let my hands rest. Not because I was tired, but because I didn't owe anyone anything in that moment. No favors, no errands, no explanations. Just stillness. That night, I found myself staring at the photo wall. It's the one in the hallway, the one with the mismatched frames going back decades. Kyle as a toddler in his Superman pajamas. Me in scrubs holding him outside the hospital on Bring Your Kid to Work Day. Us at his high school graduation. Him and Ashley cutting their wedding cake. And then it stopped. No pictures past 2018. No photos of the grandkids on that wall. Just a blank space where more memories should have been. Where love should have continued. I sat down in the hallway right there on the floor and let my back press against the wall I'd painted myself 15 years ago. I touched the edge of the last photo. You could have had everything I whispered. All you had to do was love me for me, not for what I had. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet maybe. The phone didn't ring. The front door didn't open. No texts, no drop-ins, not even a letter. You'd think after losing in court there'd be some kind of fallout, some shouting match, some desperate apology. But silence has its own language. And this one said, "You chose money over family, so now we choose silence over shame." I was grieving, not just the loss of connection, but the realization that my role had always been conditional, useful but not loved, respected but not cherished. I wasn't Kyle's mother. I'd been his sponsor. 3 days after the hearing, June came by with banana pudding and a bottle of wine. She didn't say much, just handed me the food, sat next to me on the couch, and turned on an old Western movie we both used to watch when we were kids. Halfway through, she said, "You did the right thing, you know." "I know, but knowing don't make it easy." "No," I said, "it doesn't." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "But you can sleep at night now." The funny thing is, I used to dread sleeping. Not because of nightmares, but because I'd wake up already anxious, wondering what someone would need from me that day. Who would call? What bill I'd have to help with? What unspoken obligation I'd failed to meet. Now, I slept. And in the mornings, I brewed coffee just for me. I drank it hot without interruption. I read my paper cover to cover. I walked around the neighborhood just to feel the breeze. And every time I passed the for sale sign on the Wilsons' lawn, I smiled. Because it reminded me of something Evelyn said after court. They thought your money was their inheritance. Turns out your backbone was the real legacy. Still, there were moments. Moments when I look at the family photos and wonder what I could have done differently. Moments when I check my phone out of habit, thinking maybe Kyle would reach out. But it never lit up with his name. And that was his choice. One evening, I sat down with my old journal, the one I'd used to track expenses when Kyle was little. Diapers, formula, bus fare, clinic bills, every dime accounted for. At the back was a list I'd started in 2002. Things I want to do someday. 1. Visit Nova Scotia. 2. Go on a cruise. 3. Take a painting class. 4. Write a letter to myself and actually read it. 5. Watch the sun rise somewhere with no cell service. The list ended there. At some point, I must have folded it up and forgotten it. But now, it felt like a blueprint. That night, I wrote a new list. But this time it didn't start with someday. It started with now. The first thing I did the next morning was close the joint savings account. It had always been in my name alone, but I let Kyle use the routing number for emergencies. Funny how every one of his emergencies somehow involved last-minute weekend getaways or rent shortfalls after buying new electronics. The banker was polite. He clicked a few keys, looked at me with kind eyes and said, "Your money's secure. No one will have access but you." I nodded. Good. That's exactly how I want it. The next call I made was to the scholarship foundation I'd been donating to quietly for years. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to start a private endowment fund for young women of color pursuing nursing, but I want it named after someone specific." "Yourself." I paused. "No," I said slowly. "Name it after my mother, Lillian May Grant. She taught me to work hard and keep my word." I could hear the warmth in the coordinator's voice. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was, and she never asked for a dime. That evening, I walked into my bedroom and finally opened the drawer I hadn't touched in weeks. Inside was the envelope Ashley had handed me on that birthday, the one with the loan paperwork, the one they thought I'd just signed no questions asked. I unfolded it slowly, the creases still sharp. There was Kyle's signature already filled out, Ashley's too. They'd been so sure of my guilt, so sure of their right to my sacrifice. I took a match from the candle drawer, struck it, and held the corner of the paperwork in the flame. Watched as the edge blackened, curled, and disappeared into nothing but ash. I expected it to feel dramatic. It didn't. It felt clean. Funny how you can lose your only child and still feel lighter. I had lost something precious, yes, but I'd also lost the weight of obligation, the ache of always putting myself second, the fear of saying no and being punished for it. That weight, it's heavy, and you don't realize how much it slows you down until it's gone. I started walking again, not just to clear my head, but because I had places I wanted to go. I went to a travel agency downtown, one of those places most people assume don't exist anymore. But I liked that the woman at the counter looked me in the eye and said, "Where to, ma'am?" "Nova Scotia," I replied. "One-way ticket. I'll figure out the rest after I get there." She blinked, smiled, and typed. The printer hummed, and just like that, I had a departure date. The next day, I wrote a letter. Not to Kyle, not to Ashley, just a letter. I didn't address it. Didn't even sign it. It simply said, "You cannot force someone to love you the way you want, but you can refuse to be mistreated in the name of love. I didn't leave you. You pushed me out the door, and for once in my life, I didn't close it behind me. I let the wind take it, and I kept walking." I folded the page, placed it on my desk, and left it there. It wasn't meant for anyone else to read. It was meant for me. A week later, I stood at the gate with my suitcase in hand. No family seeing me off. No text asking if I landed safely. Just me, a woman on the cusp of 63 finally choosing herself. The plane took off into a lavender sky, the clouds parting like curtains on a new act. I looked down at the shrinking city and thought, let them call it a loss. I called it a beginning. Nova Scotia smelled like salt and pine needles, the kind of clean air that made you breathe slower without realizing it. The kind of quiet that reminded you of who you were before people started calling you selfish for having boundaries. I rented a cottage by the coast. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a kitchen with peeling linoleum that reminded me of my first apartment. But the windows faced the ocean, and every morning I woke up to waves crashing like applause I'd waited a lifetime to hear. My days were simple. I walked, I cooked, I read books I'd meant to finish 10 years ago, and I painted. Lord, I hadn't picked up a brush in decades, not since high school art class. But one afternoon, I walked past a studio that offered senior classes and thought, why not? The instructor's name was Grace. She wore scarves that matched her lipstick and said things like paint like the world ended yesterday. She didn't ask about my past. No one there did. And for once, I didn't lead with my history. I wasn't Kyle's mom, I wasn't Grandma Gloria. I was just me. At night, I cooked with the music playing low and warm, and sometimes I'd laugh out loud at how easy it was to find joy in my own company. I'd never known that before. Not really. I'd spent my entire adult life defining myself by what I gave away. Now every moment I kept for myself felt like a revolution. 2 months into my new life, I received a letter. A real one. Envelope stamped, sloppy handwriting. I knew immediately. Kyle. My hands didn't shake when I opened it. Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. Ashley and I are separated. The house fell through. I'm staying with a friend. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I know I messed up. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to write this. Kyle. No excuses, no demands. Just a broken little note from a man who had finally run out of people to blame. I didn't cry, but I did sit with it. I placed the letter in a drawer next to a tube of paint I hadn't opened yet. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't always about answers. Sometimes it's about letting the pain take a seat in the corner without letting it run the house. 3 days later, I visit a local legal office and finalize the paperwork for the Lillian May Grant Scholarship Fund. It would provide 5 full nursing school scholarships a year to underprivileged Black girls across the country. 5 girls who would walk into hospitals with their heads high and their names stitched on scrubs. 5 girls who might grow up to be mothers who never needed to beg their children to see their worth. I made a note to include mentorship sessions too. Money was good, but wisdom, that's where the real value lived. The last thing I did before leaving the lawyer's office was draft a new will. 1 paragraph said it all. My estate is to be divided between scholarship initiatives, women's housing programs, and community nursing outreach. No inheritance will be distributed to any family member who has knowingly filed legal action against me in my lifetime. Simple, clean, final. The sun was setting as I walked home. That golden hour glow made the water look like poured honey. I passed 2 boys skipping rocks and a woman with silver braids pushing a stroller. They smiled. I smiled back. I thought of Kyle again, where he might be what he might be learning the hard way. Maybe this was what growth looked like, not waiting for people to say sorry the way you wanted, but accepting the kind they were capable of giving. Still, I didn't write him back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I left the letter in the drawer. That was enough for now. 1 year later, I stood on the deck of a cruise ship watching the horizon swallow the sun. Caribbean breeze in my hair, a journal in my hand, and not a single missed call on my phone. I'd started using my middle name when I traveled May. Easier that way. Fewer questions, fewer strings. Most people just thought I was a retired school teacher with a taste for quiet beaches and good coffee. And honestly, that version of me felt more real now than anything I'd been before. Every now and then, I'd check in on the scholarship fund. 23 girls funded so far. One of them sent a letter handwritten in blue ink. Ms. Grant, I don't know what made you choose me, but now I can walk into class like I belong there. I want to be a trauma nurse like my aunt. Thank you for believing in girls like me. Amari S. I read it 3 times, then pinned it inside my journal. Funny how a stranger could make you feel more seen than your own blood. I heard from Kyle once more. Email. It came through on a Tuesday morning while I was drinking espresso in a small harbor town. I don't know if you're reading this, but I got a job, a real one. I'm sober now, and I'm sorry for how I treated you. I understand why you walked away. I hope you're safe. Kyle. There was no ask, no money, no hint at reconnecting. Just a quiet recognition of the wall between us. And that finally was enough. I didn't respond, but I prayed for him. That's the difference between forgiveness and access. I'd forgiven him, but the gate that stayed locked. Later that evening, I sat with a group of older women by the ship's piano bar. We played cards and drank sweet tea cocktails with mint sprigs. One of them, Louisa, asked me what I did before retirement. I smiled. I was a nurse, And I made sure the next generation would never have to beg to be taken seriously. She raised her glass. To building legacies instead of handing out loans. We all laughed, because we knew. Women like us, we weren't made to be footnotes in someone else's story. We were the architects of our own. In my cabin, there's a letter I carry with me. Not Kyle's. Not the lawsuit. It's a letter I wrote to myself. Dear Gloria, you are not the villain for protecting your peace. You are not cruel for saying no. You are not broken because your child could not love you the way you deserved. You are whole, you are wise, and you are free. Love me. Some nights I reread it when the ocean gets loud and my heart feels soft. Not because I doubt myself, but because it's good to remember the difference between letting go and giving up. We always talk about inheritance like it's money, like it's something you leave behind. But legacy is what you live. It's how you stand when people try to kneel on your worth. It's the choices you make when nobody's watching, and especially when everyone is. Kyle once said, "What's the point of all that money if you're not going to use it for your family?" And the truth is, he was half right. Money isn't meant to sit in a vault. It's meant to build things, to break cycles, to create freedom. He just forgot that I was family too, and that I'd earned the right to choose how my legacy would be used. So here I am, 63. No contact list full of needy demands. No house full of ungrateful silence. Just a suitcase, a scholarship, a strong cup of coffee, and peace so deep it hums in my bones. Some people lose their families and break. I lost mine and built a new world. If this story spoke to you, share it with someone who's learning how to say no. Someone who's building peace from pieces. And if you've ever been made to feel guilty for protecting what's yours, just know this: you are not alone. Hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what does legacy mean to you? We're listening. We're with you. Always.